Black children as they navigate harm and abuse anchored in anti-Black racism within the school system. We will do everything within our power to make sure that families can access that advocacy. Although the majority of school boards across Ontario are receptive to advocacy support for parents, there are increasingly too many instances where advocacy is under attack. We have seen situations where parents have been told that they should attend meetings without an advocate present, where meetings are held in person specifically to ensure that advocates can't attend, where staff employed and paid by publicly funded dollars get up and walk out of meetings when conversations get difficult. We will not allow pushback against advocacy to mute or mitigate our support for parents of Black children. Advocacy and systems navigation support has been a hallmark of Black communities for decades. Our communities have always leaned on one another in order to navigate a system that treated our children inhumanely. Parents of Black children is carrying on that legacy of advocacy, and we will never allow a parent to stand alone. School boards and education leaders have a duty to allow parents the opportunity to engage with them with an advocate by their side. Black students have been at the center of a crisis of anti-Black racism within the education system for far too long. Our children are barely limping across the finish line because of the racial violence they're experiencing. And this trauma is breaking our children. As long as we have Black children being imprisoned in isolation rooms in schools, as long as we have Black children being physically restrained, as long as we have Black children followed and searched like criminals within schools, there is a need for advocacy. Our children have been sacrificed at the altar of anti-Black racism for too long, and we will not deny parents the right to support in this process. Parents of Black children is proud to lead the Student and Family Advocacy Program in Ontario, which sees 17 organizations dedicated to providing advocacy support to Black families in the education and adjacent systems. We will continue to do this work with integrity, with dedication, and with urgency. That is why today we are officially launching an advocacy framework. The development of this framework is an intentional and clear response to the pushback we are seeing some school boards take when challenged by our organization and other advocacy organizations. The framework is designed to set the tone for advocacy so that no parent is left in a situation where school leaders are refusing to meet with them or meet with their advocate. No school in this province, no organization, no educator should feel comfortable ignoring the rights of any parent and child in the education system. Advocacy is a right. Advocacy will never be comfortable. It will never be easy for a system to digest, but it's imperative that this change and accountability will always be accompanied by unapologetic and passionate advocacy. The POBC advocacy framework will be a tool that reminds school boards and educators alike that they have a responsibility to address the concerns of parents and to cater to the safety and the well-being of Black students who deserve a peaceful educational experience. I'll now pass this along to Charlene Grant, our co-founder and our Chief Advocacy Officer, to continue.
I realized I was on mute, sorry. Thank you, Carrie. As advocates, we will always support parents to the fullest extent and work to protect Black children from harm. We want school boards to know that advocates are not the enemy. Our goal is always a collaborative approach to offer a resolution to families who reach us for support. Everyone should approach these conversations centering the child. This is why we are asking school boards to come to the table with humility. Prepare to hold perpetrators accountable. For us, this means the 4 R's. Report, remove, resolve, rebuild. Report educators who have been found guilty of discrimination/racism as professional misconduct to the Ontario College of Teachers and additional reporting bodies as required. Remove perpetrators. Look for resolution to resolve the issue and rebuild the child. Rebuild the relationship with parent, and rebuild the school community. Parents very rarely seek out an advocate as the first point of contact. They come to us out of frustration after trying to resolve these concerns with their school and school boards. In fact, nearly 60% of parents who reach out to us do so after first contacting the school and getting nowhere. It should never be this difficult for parents to access engagement and resolution from a school when it comes to their child. We'd now like to talk about a case that likely you have all heard about by now that illustrates the importance of advocacy. Before we hear from the parent, I would like to give you a summary of the case that illustrates the importance of having advocates stand side by side with parents and a swift and urgent response from an education system in the face of anti-Black racism. Parents of Black children were first contacted a few weeks ago after a 6-year-old Black child disclosed to his mother that he was being isolated at school. This little boy came home in tears almost every day and expressed how he was verbally berated and put down by teachers on a regular basis. In a series of inhumane acts, the child who attends John Fisher Public School was detained/imprisoned in an isolation room. For over 11 days, he was sent to the office every day without his mother's knowledge. He also regularly sat at a desk that was filled with derogatory and racist terms such as poo-poo and caca. The teacher referred to a child who is in grade 1 as obnoxious and unpleasant to be around to his mother, and also told his mother that the child was not smart enough to be in the French immersion program at the school. His mother tried to raise her concerns with the school administrators and leaders who did nothing to address the issues and instead left the boy in an emotional and physical abusive environment. It was only through the support of parents of Black children advocates that the principal, vice principal, and teachers of the school were placed on home assignment and removed. It is through advocacy, that discussion and about safety for the child in the school occurred. Without advocacy, this child would still be in a situation where he was facing abuse within his school. This is an example of a system, Toronto District School Board, responding with urgency and appropriately engaging with advocates to resolve an egregious issue brought forward by a parent. This is what collaboration between advocates and school boards should look like: quick and responsive action to protect a child. This is also a perfect example why we are calling on the Ontario Human Rights Commission to initiate a fulsome, holistic inquiry into the experience of Black children within the education system. To tell her story fully, I would now like to introduce Farida. Farida will be reading her statement via a pre-recorded video. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Charlene. So we'll now be sharing Farida's statement.
The first week of the school year in September, my son always came back crying and stressed. And he would say that he needs to be removed from the school. So during the second week, I traveled for work. And then when I returned, I received an email from the class teacher saying that, my son's behavior and his conduct in class is getting in the way of, his studies. And of course, it's also affecting the rest of the group. So I scheduled a meeting the following day, which was a Friday. And when I got to his classroom, I met with the teacher, who were just the two of us. So he asked so many questions, including as to why, I had traveled. And, he was expressing all, these surprises that actually I had traveled for work. And then he said, anyway, to deal with, the purpose of our meeting, he said that, my son is lagging behind and he cannot, he can never catch up with the rest of the group. And he said that, he wasn't intelligent enough to be in a dual track environment. I should switch him to an English only school, an English only track. He didn't say school. And of course, noting that, the school, which is John Fisher Public School, only has, at that time, it only has, early French immersion. And of course, my son would not be able to stay in the school. He went on to say that my son was, obnoxious and unpleasant to be around. He is a big guy, and when he does the stupid things he does, the rest of the students follow, and he's not a good influence in the class. I was taken back by how he was talking to me with the lack of respect. There was no contact. There was no eye contact, and even he didn't have any. He didn't see any need to kind of filter what he's saying. He showed me some work from another student. I don't know. He didn't mention the student's name, and he said, you can look at this work and compare to what your son does, and see this. We have a high caliber of students at John Fisher, and your son doesn't meet that standard and will not catch up. So I told him that, what, my child being in a French immersion, school, I just don't walk into a neighborhood school and so I want to register my son into a French immersion a track. So it takes a process. It was intentional, it was deliberate, and it's just the past week of school. What could I do to help him improve or catch up with the rest of the group? He told me to go to the public library and look for resources. So I told him, what? He's going to stay in the class. It was purposeful. I intentionally put him into French immersion, but I'm going to find ways of supporting him. So my son continued coming home crying, and I also, realized that he had started mimicking what was said during, the conversations that I had with the class teacher, saying that, I'm not supposed to be in French immersion. I should be in an English only school because French is complex for me. You should get me out of that school and take me to an English only school. And then I think another time he said that, the teacher told him that he's supposed to be in a JK environment because that's where his intelligence is or belongs. So when he said that to me, I organized the meeting with the principal. We had a conversation, and then when I told her the experiences, she said, "Do you have evidence?" I said, "No, it was me and the teacher." Then she said, it's surprising, but I'll talk to the teacher. I'm not going to switch your son from that class. I told her, it doesn't matter as long as my son gets a better experience as he has had previously. I want him to be included in this, in the class. I don't want him to be, picked on and all that. So, but then my son continued to be stressed, and you could see he's emotionally falling apart. He would come home crying and would say, "My head is going to explode. I'm not going to go to school. I hate school. I don't like school," and all that all the time. So I sent an email to the principal, and I included the superintendent. So coincidentally, the time when I sent that email, that the principal had agreed that we meet with the teacher to devise ways of, helping my son. to improve his experience in class. The day before the meeting, the principal called me and said, the teacher, his name was, he's Mosum Masco. He said he has agreed to meet with you and, discuss your son. But the condition is you can't make a mention of what happened. And that's the only way. He wasn't inclined to meet me. And, if I talk about what happened, the conversations we had previously. And he's also going to bring a second teacher who is an SK teacher to prove that my son's, his performance does not meet, the standards of, being in grade 1. So, and they asked me to find a parent to go with for the meeting because I'm going to, there's going to be 3 TDSP teachers, and I'm going to be overwhelmed. So I called a parent who is also involved in the school because I'm very involved in the school. And she agreed to come with me for the meeting. And we got there at, the meeting was supposed to be 7:50. We got there before then. I also had my other, son, because I had to drop him off and it was still too early and I could have missed the meeting as well, who goes to a different school. And when we got to the school, the principal ushered us to her office. I had taken downstairs. And then she mentioned that, she's going to go and speak to the teacher, Monsieur Masco. And when she took her time to come back, she left us in her office, another parent, myself, and my son, who goes to a different school, my other son. And then when she came back from speaking with Mosimasiko, she came back and asked me if I really wanted to hold the meeting, if I really wanted the other parent to be around, or if I could, reschedule to another time. I said, no, I'm here for a meeting. And I called this parent because I trust her and she's part of, the school council. Then we can have, these conversations or the treatment of my child beyond just, maybe bring it into the broader discussions and of what happens in the school. So she went back and she was taking her time. Then she came back after maybe, 5 minutes or 7 minutes. It was a long time. She came back with a sticky note with written notes and said, the teacher is unable to meet us, but he has provided some guidance on how he's going to help Mikhail. So the other parents said, no, this is not acceptable. Because if it was any other parent, you would not have done this. You scheduled the meeting to your own convenience. You can't just do that. Then the principal's response was, wouldn't you feel attacked if, 3 people came to you? So 3 people, myself, that parent, and my son, my young son, so to the teacher, who is claiming that my son is not suited to be in a school environment and they schedule a meeting, then all of a sudden he feels attacked. So the principal said it's not going to be possible to meet us. Maybe we can have, we can try another time. So we left that morning. Of course, I was so disoriented. And then when I came in the evening to pick my son from school, the principal came following me. He goes to daycare. It was after the school hours. So we had a conversation and she mentioned that, I realize you've lost you've lost confidence in Monsieur Masco, so I'm going to change your son to a different class. So I asked her, is it going to be immediate? She said, no, it's going to take a couple of, of days. So we met with the, fast forward, we met with the new teacher, he's Monsieur Mahmoudi, and we had, just brainstorming how and what his, strengths and needs are. And then during that conversation, I realized that, my son has all these, they call them the ILPs on his record, which I'm not a party to, or which I wasn't aware of. But I had, I don't know how the system here, because I didn't study here. So I didn't really pay much attention to that. So when he switched teachers, he did have a good experience. The first, few weeks, I even, notified the teacher and the principal, and actually copied that to the, to the superintendent. So after 2 weeks of moving class, it was Halloween. It was Halloween time. And then the day after November 1st, he brought candy to school. But all this time still with the new teacher, he was still complaining that he spent to the office all the time. He spent his time going to the office, and had, started getting calls, constant calls, very, I would say unimportant calls from both the principal and the vice principal. I've been passing by the, the library, and I had your son, the gym, and I had your son using an outdoor voice indoors. She says, okay, I'm going to, to speak for 5 minutes. She spends like 20 or 30 minutes on the phone repeating herself and asking me if I'm, emphasizing that I should teach the same values that I taught at school, because, they feel like putting the same messaging at home as it's done at school. And his, values are different from John Fisher values. The day before, it was January 30th, and this has been the practice. He does something in class, and he's sent, whether it's an accident or intentional, because I'm never there, he does something and is punished over a long period of time. He's excluded from class. So what happened on a Monday, they had a supply teacher. He's stretching his arms, and he hits another student. They don't claim that it was intentional, called another student in the class. So he was sent to the office, and the principal, told him, and she sent me, she actually called me, talked to me, and I believe she sent me an email as well. And, said that, if my son is interested in Cobra Kai antics, she can organize other parents to, to bring their kids, and they start a program, I believe, at the school. So that day, I don't know what time it was, he never went back to the class. He was punished for accidentally hitting another child. Then the following morning, it was a Tuesday, so that the regular classroom teacher came back. And after attendance, the teacher told my son, this is in the morning, even before they did any school activity, that, he learned that he hit another student yesterday, so he should go to the office. So my son goes to the office. When he goes to the office this time, he's met with the vice principal this time, who says, I didn't know, how come I'm just getting to know that you hit another student in class? So don't you know that, you're a big guy, when you throw your arms around, you're going to hit other people around you or other students. So she asked him to write an apology. And, she went on to do her business. My son was left with the secretaries without any work, without any instructions. So he says at one point, he told the secretaries, I'm done with the apology. Can I go back to class then? And the secretary said, no, he should have known that he can't make, he can't distract class. So he's going to be there until the principal comes back. Then sometime at a certain point, when he's seated in the office and of course distressed, they bring another child who is hurt during recess. And my son asks the student, what happened? Then the principal tells him he's, being distracted. And that's when he was taken to the room. So I don't know how long he was there. He hasn't really, I think when we had a meeting at the school, that was the first time he said it was 30 minutes. But for the entire day, he had spent it in the office. Because my son's experience is not a unique experience. A lot of, students of color go through, navigate the school system this way all the time. So to me, beyond removing the school principal and the teacher at one school does not resolve that, does not improve the experiences of the so many other Black students or people of color or students of color go through on a daily basis. So I believe, action should be taken in order to ensure that, minorities don't experience this again in a school environment. Stressed. And, he was excited to learn that, the principal and especially the vice principal, because he says, even beyond the principal's bullying, the vice principal was very aggressive all the time towards him. So he was happy that they are gone, but he's still skeptical about going to school. He's distressed. And of course, because he spent many months being excluded from the school environment, because he's also, the few times he's allowed in class, he sits alone from the other students. He sits in a corner. That's where his desk was placed. He needs a lot of support to be able to trust the school environment again. And of course, this will take time. He's 6 years and in grade 1.
Thank you, everybody. So at this time, we will be taking questions. So I think what we can do is you can raise your hand and we'll call upon you, and then we will direct the question to the appropriate person. All right, we have Chris. Please unmute and ask your question.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for taking our questions and for doing this event today. I was just curious, with this specific situation that you're talking about here, were there any other complaints that you guys have become aware of against this specific teacher? And are you aware of whether or not this is a white teacher?
Charlene, can you answer that question, please?
So yes, we've had another parent came forward last night about her child being sent to the office constantly and on a regular basis, and also be locked or being detained, I guess, or imprisoned in this isolation room. So yes, and as far as the educator being white, he had once told mom that he's Moroccan, he's Muslim Moroccan, and so whatever he identify as, maybe, I don't know. I know I've seen him he's white passing, I guess, and present to be white, but that's what he had shared with mom at one point.
Okay, got it. And with this other child, were they also, this other parent that came forward last night, is this also a racialized child? And were
Yes.
they also complaining of racist behavior towards their child too?
Yes, the little girl is Black. She's a 4-year-old little girl. And also, there's also another 5-year-old mom who have came forward as well. Not a Black child.
Okay, got it. And so these are all 3 kids from the same school, obviously, but not the same grade or class, right?
Not for the same grade or class, no. In his class, he's the only Black boy in his class. We noticed when we were there last Thursday.
Okay, got it. And can I understand that there is that the boy was then like the mother put like audio or video recording on the boy to capture what was happening within the classroom. Can you just explain why you're not able to show us that video that was captured showing the racism and the inhumane treatment that you're describing?
Well, yes, she did. That was part of her. I mean, again, mom shared with you that she's new. She wasn't raised in this country. For us at POBC, it's ironic for us that someone actually did this. In one of our previous meetings with a school board, I actually joked and said, are you pushing us to now arm our families, our Black families with spy cam to capture their experiences? Because every time we raise concern, we hear prove it. For us, we're getting legal advice on how much of that video we could share, but mom has a series of them. Yes.
Okay, got it. And it was video, not just audio, correct?
Audio only.
Oh, it was audio only. Okay. And can you then describe for us why there's the feeling that there were racial components to this? Just, I mean, not to be too, but hit it over the head for us, Charlene.
Okay, sure. So nothing mom brought to us when we first met with her was new. It's systemic. The over surveillance like when Black parents are known to have their phone glued to them at any time they're at work because the calls that come in are frivolous. They get called. One of the calls mom got was that he was picking his nose. I was walking by and he wasn't using his indoor voice. He was mimicking the secretary because he was in the office board. When they talk about his size being big and large, I have really tall children, and that is one thing that was on a report card that described my child. I know Carrie have had the same experience. That is a known way in describing Black children, adultifying them. When mom, the French immersion, him telling mom that in 2 weeks, 10 days of being at that school, and he will say things like, he's not fit for this track. French immersion have been used for years to stream our children out of the French immersion stream. So this is very common behavior. And to say that he is not, like, to call him, this educator was just very bold in some of the things that he said by calling the kids stupid, and everyone would laugh. The child shared with the mother the words written on his desk. He was handed that marker by his teacher to write whatever he wants. There have been so many incidences. We have our simple request that we talk about our kids are invisible and visible all at the same time. But the over policing, the constant surveillance it's not just at school. We walk in a store, we're surveillance. Wherever we go, everybody thinks that they could police our behavior. That in itself is historic.
Thank you so much for all that. That's the end of my questions.
Thank you so much, Chris. We had Brittany in the chat who was trying to raise her hand. So Brittany Rosen, can you please go ahead and unmute yourself, and I will get to Caroline. And I believe I saw Katrina's hand up at one point next.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to reiterate my gratitude for holding this press conference and answering our questions today. Obviously, this is a very unsettling investigation. Charlene, I read online that you gained access to this isolation room. Can you give us an idea of what that was like for you? I know, you mentioned that you couldn't even fully stretch your arms out. Just paint a picture for us of how tiny this room was.
That room for me was very triggering. When we were at the school last Thursday and mom brought that up, at that point, before she went in telling of her stories, I know you didn't get through all of it here today. At that point, I had already listed 48 incidences of anti-Black racism attack against this child. I'm not going to call them microaggression because they're not, they're racial violence. And when we got to where mom said her son was imprisoned in this room, I asked, who's going to show us that room? And we called the child down. And when I asked the child, can you show me the room where you were locked into? He said, sure. And he walked straight in the office without any hesitation and showed us the room. I was floored because it was like a closet. It was more to me like a broom closet, if I'm thinking of the size of it. And I immediately took a picture because I knew no one would believe me if I leave that day without taking a picture of that. And again, it's that whole black people say anything, prove it. So I immediately, after I took the picture, I went in the room and I locked the door. And I stretched out my arms and I didn't go fully. I was this, and I was in there with one of the TDSB staff, and we were both touching each other. That's how tiny that room is. And when I spoke to that mom last night, the new mom that came forward, her daughter told her that when they locked her in the room, they shut the light off. Like, how scary is that for a child to be locked in a room? I don't care if it was 5 minutes, 2 minutes, or seconds. The fact of the matter, it was used to punish and discipline. This is not the first time parents of Black children are hearing about isolation room in schools. We generally hear it in Catholic schools, but this is our first time hearing about it in a public school.
Thank you so much for that. I also had one other question. Have both children, the one at the center of this investigation, as well as the additional child, have they both returned to school since? And also, what have been the psychological, mental impacts on children?
That the mental and psychological harm right now is unknown. To me, these are irreparable damage and harm that has been done to these children. I know I hear these stories all the time, so they hit me a little bit differently. If I'm honest, I am scared and I'm terrified of how these children will move forward. I think it will be years of therapy. I know we offer therapy, but what we have capacity to offer these children, it's nowhere near what they're gonna be needing to be able to function in society. Mom has a very demanding job. So of course, the day that we got to the school last Thursday at 12 o'clock, after seeing the room and all the stuff that was written on his desk, mom pulled him from school and he didn't go to school the next day, and she had to call in sick for work and let them know she has to be home with her child. But he has since returned. He doesn't want to go to school. He hates it. He cries. I was on the phone with him, hearing him say, I forgot to tell you, my head is hurting me. Oh, sorry, my stomach's hurting me. This is how he's describing not wanting to be in that environment. I will say, when he showed up on Monday, mom shared with me that they had an acting principal, which was a Black guy. For him, he didn't want to go, even though he knew those other admins were removed. But when he saw a representation that looks like him, he smiled. But to answer your question, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a therapist to know what the harm is, but I know that is something that Toronto District School Board will have to pay for.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brittany, and thank you, Charlene. Next, can I have Caroline? Please unmute your mic and ask your question.
Hi there. Charlene, I just want to clarify what you said earlier. Was it one or two other families that approached you last night? And what were the allegations made then?
Initially, it was one family who reached out to me on Instagram and shared her story because her mom was watching the news and saw it and called her immediately and said, what's the name of her granddaughter's school? And John Fisher told her to turn on the TV because there's a lady speaking about it. And the allegation that she made is about being locked in the room with the lights being shut off, constantly be sent in the office, the over surveillance of her 4-year-old child, her child being, one of the things that was very similar was the amount of days that she spent in the office on a regular basis. Apparently, every day after 12 o'clock, she was sent to the office. You heard Farida say every day after attendance, her child was sent to the office. So when I read her Instagram, which was very detailed, I immediately gave her my number to call me. This was literally after 9 p.m. at night. While I was speaking to her over the phone, and for me, for parents of Black children, we just don't want to hear someone tell us their story. I asked her to send me an email. And as I was speaking to her on the phone, a girlfriend of hers came over, whose child also goes to the same school and is also a 5-year-old child. And she had me speak with her friend, who they were all sharing these stories and talking about, they just thought it was normal. They were going to ask to have their children removed from the school. And so it's 2 families, just so you know, it's 2 families that came forward since last night. And the 5-year-old, her mom was complaining of neglect of her daughter being lost once. And when they asked where was her child, nobody knew. They didn't realize the child was being picked up by someone else. And just the lack of supervision that her daughter was receiving at the school. She didn't share anything about being locked in a room. Only one parent did.
Okay, and was that this school year?
Yes, this school year.
Have you approached the TDSB about it?
Not yet. You guys are, I guess you're going to call this an exclusive because you're hearing it here right now. We haven't told them that we've 2 other parents came forward. No, not yet.
Thank you.
But we will, just not yet.
Thank you, Caroline, and thank you, Charlene. Natalie?
Hi, everyone. My questions were actually similar to Caroline's about this other family, the 4-year-old girl, and whether the board was aware of it or investigating. But can you clarify, in the case of the 4-year-old, the allegation here that she was also locked in that room? Can you provide any details on when this happened or the circumstances surrounding that allegation? How many times this happened with this student?
I don't know. I didn't get I don't know yet when it happened, when exactly, but within this school year. But what I do know, it was multiple times. And I know that because the mom stressed that once the daughter said the light was shut off on her, another time the principal said the little girl destroyed the room. And the mom said, how could she destroy the room if somebody was watching her? The mom did share and said the room that the principal showed her, that pointed out to her, that they locked her daughter and had a window, so it didn't look like the same room. But the mom shared with me that maybe they weren't being truthful about it being the same room, because they told her the room had a window, but that's not this room that she saw on what we shared in the video yesterday.
Whenever we do cases like this, or whenever stories like this become public, there are so many families that come forward because they're having a similar experience, and it takes us time. This is all happening in it's live, right? So you heard Charlene say that she got a message last night. So it takes us time as well to go through and talk to the families and clarify their stories, and then approach the board with it. So we're working through that process. We will continue to provide that support to parents, any parent that comes forward to us. But what we do know is that these are never just one-off instances. It is never just one child. There are so many touch points for Black parents in Farida's story. So many of us can identify with parts of that story because they've happened to us. And that's why these parents are coming forward. So we expect it will likely continue.
Thank you, Natalie, Carrie, and Charlene. Is there any more questions that we have? If you're not able to raise your hand, please feel free to say something in the chat and I can call upon you. Okay. So at this time, we will wrap up. I would like to thank everybody for joining us today. All of your interview requests for anybody that was on this call, including the mom whose statement that you did hear, please send me an email at shannon.liverpool@parentsofblackchildren.org, and I can coordinate those interviews. Now, please keep in mind that we are working with mom's schedule, and like Charlene had mentioned previously, she has a very demanding job. So we will have to work around that. So just give me an email and I can get in contact with you for that. If there is any further questions, this is your last chance. Okay. Thank you all today again for joining us. We really appreciate it. And we hope to have you at the next press conference. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.